Now we expand the conversation with a panel discussion focused on best practices, transparency frameworks, and the evolving policies needed to make energy auctions work across our region. Moderated by the Head of Sustainable Markets, Climate Strategy and Delivery at the EBRD, Adil Hanif. Please take the stage. And joining him on the panel, Minister of Mining, Oil and Gas and Acting Minister of Energy, Government of Montenegro, Admir Shehmanovic, Macedonian Minister of Energy, Mining and Mineral Raw Materials, Sanja Božinovska, Head of Finance and Advisory, Unicredit Bank Serbia, Svetlana Cerovic, CEO of New Energy Solutions, Miloš Colic, and Executive Vice President, CWP Europe, Maja Turkovic. A round of applause, everyone.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And first of all, thank you very much to everyone who stayed with us. I realize this is the final panel of the day, so many of you are sort of going the extra mile. But oh. Oh, okay, all right. Well, we're close to the end. We're close to the end. We have an afternoon slot, and especially Minister Shehmanov, I think you're doing the second panel in succession, so certainly appreciate it.
Plus 5 meetings today.
Plus 5 meetings. But okay, no, so this is a really important topic for us and a really exciting topic for us. So Maria sketched out what we've been doing in EBRD in terms of auctions. And it's something that we're deeply passionate about. I think earlier some of you might have joined the panel that we had on mobilizing green capital, and we see auctions as a hugely important way of doing that. Now, in terms of actually being able to deliver an auction, it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to run an auction. And certainly in terms of the different stakeholders involved, we're very privileged today to have all of the key stakeholders with me on stage. So we have the policymakers, they're the ones setting the goals, they're the ones setting the parameters. We have the developers, they're the ones who are going to bring in the projects. And then we also have the people who are going to finance those projects. So I'm doubling up for EBRD on the MDB side, but certainly the private sector and commercial banks' role is particularly important. So we're going to talk a little bit about the different issues around auctions. The region, this is an exciting time for the region. As Maria mentioned, we have seen auctions already take place in a number of countries. Most recently, we saw Serbia release the auction results in February, but also very exciting developments in the country that we are in at the moment, and as well also in North Macedonia. So both countries where we're certainly looking forward to more developments. So without further ado, we'll start going into getting some thoughts from our distinguished panelists. And I'd like to start with Mr. Shehmanovic, first of all. You adopted a new law on renewable energy sources. It was a milestone achievement last year. And you're now looking ahead to RES development. We heard in the previous panel about some of the things that you're thinking about. But more concretely, what are some of the things that you're thinking about in terms of next steps for renewables in Montenegro, and also what role auctions are playing in that thinking?
Thank you. Thank you. I have to say that since our meeting yesterday, I'm thinking only about the auctions. I would like, first of all, to thank to our friends from EBRD from the huge support that we are receiving from them all the time. And this adoption of the law on the renewables would not be possible with your support, and we are very happy to have you on board with us. So we are certain that we are going in the right direction. So as we saw that, I have to say also we are a bit jealous on Albania and Serbia. They are much advanced in this field, and they already have managed to perform the auctions for 800 megawatts or 1,200 in Serbia. So we have to keep up and we have to start fast. So until now, until the present, we had this feed-in tariff system, and now we have around 180 megawatts in our feed-in feed-in tariff systems. The prices are not so good, like, believe it or not, we have it like for some 12 or 13 years, and the price for hydro is around 90 euros, and for the wind is 110 euros. But thanks God, it will expire in the next couple of years, which is going hand by hand with our new plans. We had, as I said, we had yesterday a fruitful meeting with our colleagues from EBRD, and we agreed that they should start with preparation of project of tender documentation, and also with the preparation of the necessary bylaws in order to enable this process. So we believe that until June, eventually July, we'll be ready to publish a auction call. We did not agree yet about the quota, but let's say it could be like around 200, but that we would like to have a mix also for solar and for wind. And finally, to start, our requirement in accordance with the EU integrations is 400 megawatts in next 3 years. So this would be also a huge step for us to do half of it in the next few months. We believe we are encouraged by the results, by the prices that our colleagues in Serbia have received, and I'm certain that this kind of mechanism will also foster the investments. For example, if we publish a call for 200 megawatts, I believe somehow that we will manage to foster investment in the minimum amount of 1 billion euros, because now, as you were present before the first panel, as I said, that we have issued 42 urbanistic technical conditions for 42 projects, but most of them are still in development phase, and the project developer are lacking of funds because of inability to present to borrowers, to banks, the cash flow and the possibility of some long-term distribution. So this is the way also to enable, to secure additionally some energy security in the future, and as well to foster the investments. So we are all into this.
No, thank you very much. And certainly those are the clear signals, the policy signals that ultimately is what's needed to unlock interest. And sticking to the subject on interest, we're going to turn to the developer side here. And specifically over to Mr. Turkovic, Maja from Executive Vice President at CWP Europe, an international developer. And really one of the things that we want to try and do, and when we talk to our policymakers about auctions, is that ultimately you are competing against other countries. You know, developers are trying to look at different markets, and they're making decisions about which markets they're going to enter. And so from your perspective as a large developer that's active in different markets, including markets within the region, you know, what's influencing your decisions? What's driving your decisions when you're looking at an auction and thinking about whether to enter a particular market?
Thank you. This is a very good question. So it's not just the auctions, actually. It's like in the framework changes over time as the countries have to transpose the EU directives. And this is something we are following very closely. But, you know, Miloš and myself, we started like 17 years ago. We were in the trenches. You know, there was no law that regulates renewables at the time when we started development. So with EBRD, the first bankable PPA during the feed-in tariff regime was developed. You know, at that time, you know, we were well in the very development without any idea how we're gonna figure out the offtake. So we've been there, you know, so this is much easier today when you have more predictability. The implementation is another thing, but in terms of the auction, it's obviously the markets that have structured CFD system in auctions where the governments come up with a plan are more attractive as an investment destination, I would say. You know, again, when I look where we've been 15 years ago and how we've made the investment decisions, I would say we're in a safer, happier place today. So obviously, nowadays in this new world, it's very important in order to monetize the project, what you're going to do with your product, with your electricity. So that's a kind of the dominant criteria when we are assessing markets, and we understand that the governments are pledging to implement the similar schemes. What I would say as a very important factor is that when the government, such as Serbian, for example, let me take for example, come up with a consecutive three-year auction plan. So, and then there's a capacity that's going to be allocated on the CFD auctions. This is the moment that for us is basically a signal that we can, pursue with the development in order to reach in time the foreseen auctions. And it's very important for us that the government sticks to the plan so that, everything, because it's in our industry, in our world, this is it's very risky process, where our investment cycles are very lengthy, where developers are basically putting a lot of resources, both money and other, to develop the project with the aim of, concluding the financing with the banks, with the development banks, with commercial banks, and then ultimately build. So government is the most important stakeholder in that process, So I would say we are, with regard to Serbia, very content about the results because the government exactly did what it was planned. Of course, with the huge help of EBRD, but EBRD was involved from the very start. I would say from the feed-in tariffs, when we are delivering the first bankable PPA. I mean, there are other factors other than the auctions, but I would say that this is the prevailing factor when we are looking at the attractiveness of the market, is the ability to structure and close the offtake agreement. In some countries, you can go merchant. We built the merchant project in Romania. It's now energized these days. In other markets, you have a very developed corporate PPA market. That's not the case for our Western Balkan region, where I believe investors would mainly be looking for the auction scheme, which is the key and main enabler for the projects to ultimately get financed and then built. Yeah.
Okay, Naomi, thank you very much, and certainly, thank you also for the kind words on Serbia. But the things that you mentioned there, I mean, the role of the government being key, and that's something that we often see and we often emphasize, and certainly they're the key player. You mentioned a couple of things there about three-year plans, about an overall legislative framework, and perhaps that's a good way to come back to the government side, and maybe, Madam Minister, if I could maybe ask you, North Macedonia, in terms of policy commitment, there is quite a lot of ambition. At COP28, you unveiled a platform, a Just Energy Transition Investment Platform. It foresees, I believe, over a gigawatt, well over a gigawatt of renewables capacity. And really, from your perspective, what are you seeing in terms of the role of auctions in the delivery of that investment, and some of the steps that you're taking towards that delivery?
Thank you very much for the question. Yes, at COP29, we said we will have 1.7 gigawatts of renewables. To go back in the date, we started with feed-in tariffs in 2011, and at that time we had 250, then we had 150, 90 euros per megawatt hour. Then we had premium tariffs, and the maximum price was 14.9 and the minimum was 0.1. So after that, we had a lot of interest in the renewables. So at COP28, there was agreed 1.7 gigawatts and estimation of 3 billion euros, which is a high number for our country. From the investor side, I understand that what they want is security and safety, and when they start to do the project, they want commitment from the government and to keep their word. So legislation, I understand. We are preparing the new law. So for us, it was one of the first tasks. And the second one was the law for renewables. Unfortunately, we don't have PPA corporate long-term, like not even 5 years, not 10 years. But since last year, we started to talk with EBRD. And finally, last week, we had the first kickoff meeting regarding the CFD. We are happy that the knowledge that was in Serbia and in Albania, so we are not jealous of them, we are happy that we can use the knowledge that was received in Serbia and Albania, and we can use it now. So the process can be shortened, so they know they already been there. And we think that by Q1 next year, we can have the first auctions. Also, they will see the law for renewables and give expertise, because this is the right moment where they can give us some feedback for the current legislation. We understand that it's a tough process, but we started to do it, and we also are implementing the guarantees of origin also. It should be next month when our energy exchange, they already purchased the software, so they should implement it. So these are the steps that we as a government are undertaking. We started, so I think we are in a good way.
No, thank you. And indeed, I mean, it is an exciting time to look ahead. You mentioned June, July auctions in terms of announcing and Q1 next year. So quite a lot of momentum already in the region, certainly in these two countries to look forward to. Just going back on the developer side, so I'm going to come to you, to Mr. Solic. New Energy Solutions, you're the founder and the CEO. I think your experience in particular is quite unique. You have very strong local roots. One of the things that we often hear as criticisms about auctions is this leaves no space for a local market, that this is an invitation for people to come from all corners of the globe, and the people on the ground, it's not for them. It's not for the people who are actually based in the country. But your experience kind of bucks that trend. You've been very successful in developing a large number of projects, and in particular developing very strong partnerships with a number of international players. And really like to hear your perspective on what auctions means for the local market and what that experience has been like in Serbia.
Yeah, okay. First of all, I'm very thankful to the organizers for inviting me to this conference and to EBRD, which is moderating the panel. It's always a very good feeling to be in Porto, Montenegro, and the forum itself is organized in a very professional and good matter. So congratulate on that. When it comes to this specific topic, I will try to be as low as controversial I could be. Okay, so imagine that me with 185 centimeters going to the NBA, the Prime League, and trying to compete with them. And then this is exactly the question that you raise. Like you have investments of 200 million, 300 million, 400 million euros. Okay, and then you have only few of the local investors who have capacity to follow that league. So, I often hear and I discuss with people from the industry, like if you don't have these bank guarantees, you cannot participate. Yes, I agree to that, but you need to then put your place in the coordinate system where you should be, regarding like capacity. I'm 185, I'm not 205 with 120 kilos. And I need to be in the place where my capacity is bringing me. And this brings us to the partnership. You either are big multinationals, which again cannot do anything, without a strong local knowledge and capacity, because you can be the richest guy in the world, but you simply don't know where is the entrance to cadastre. Like it's simply you cannot find it. You don't know where it is. You need to have a local guy to take you to the cadastre. Most often it's the employees, but building up the team to develop that, it's also a process. New energy solutions exist since 2012, and we are organically now of almost 50 people, but in very slow, let's say, growth potential, because it's our business is an industry itself. It's very fragile, and and I will use another example. When we talk about auctions, they are the key topic of the panel. We see, my theory is that the auctions, the feed-in tariffs was like the same thing, like you were learning how to walk, like the basics. And then you are fully protected, and your daddy is holding you for the hand and takes you to the park. Auctions is already driving a bicycle. You have a market, you have upside, you need to be a little bit more complex in the business. You have more administration, you need to better calculate, like you not only run for something, you need to optimize your project. This is essential for that. And then it's by natural cause of event, like Maya said, in some developed market, like in North, you have these fully merchant projects, which are the one which will happen here, but not now. Like we need to first learn how to drive a bicycle, and we had a good experience. I can talk from Serbian perspective and from the EBRD perspective, because one of our projects was funded by EBRD, and to demystify one thing, I was telling this on one conference before, I will repeat it here. We finished the Pupin wind farm financial closing in less than 6 months, with EBRD, one of the leading developers. And everybody was saying, EBRD is slow, let's go to our friends from the commercial banks. Okay. But still, EBRD was really prompt on that, and we really finished everything on time. So putting that in context, I think that these auctions, what was happened in the past, for Serbia especially, I cannot say for Albania, it was a very good job, and we are very thankful to EBRD for dealing with this, because and I will finish with that. Now we see in the last year, 2024, Montenegro adopted the renewable energy law, and this year they already want to launch the auctions. We had 2021 adoption of the renewable energy law, but only 2023 we actually get there with auctions, because the devil is in the details. I really hope that all mistakes and all, let's say, flaws that we had in 2022, 2023 will be now implemented within the framework which is you are now preparing. And you know that the best, because that you are the usual suspect for the credits. I will stop now. Please stop me.
We learn from your mistakes.
Sorry, Maya, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment something. I want to challenge the perception that the auctions are designed for international players rather than local ones. I think this is just not true. They are designed, and the process applies for everybody equally. The law by itself is not discriminatory. It comes with a scrutiny, though. So this is something that one can discuss. But the nature of the auctions are such that it needs to provide protection for the government, because the other party needs to submit bid bonds. Okay, so maybe locals cannot do that, but the government needs it. So I would say if we're challenging that, you're challenging the very design. It applies to everybody just the same. So I strongly disagree, not with Miloš, because we have the same point of view, but I disagree that it's favoring the national players. They need to have scrutiny, and this is not trivial, I can tell you.
Yeah.
This is not trivial at all. It requires the companies to do all sorts of things that Miloš was mentioning, a lot of work in optimization, and just the very formal process of applying, of qualifying, takes an effort, where a small mistake can really cost you so much. So just my comments, yeah.
No, indeed, and thank you on that, particularly on the lessons. I mean, certainly there was quite a journey in Serbia. Maria's here, there's quite a journey in Albania. It takes time, and I think indeed in terms of where, but it also gives lessons. It gives lessons that we can take across to other countries, and certainly those are the types of lessons that we're drawing on when we're working with you in Montenegro, and as we're working in North Macedonia. Maybe going to the other piece here as well, which is on the financing. So that's the final bit here, because ultimately, from the policy side, you are setting the conditions under which the developers can come in and bid for projects, but ultimately to get these projects developed and commissioned. If you want them done quickly, you can come to EBRD as well, as we've heard. But of course, there's the commercial banks. And as Maria articulated in the opening, the scale of financing is such that this is not a job for MDBs alone. It's not a job that we're delighted to be financing, but the commercial banks have to come forward. And I think your experience, Meserovic, in Serbia is particularly instructive, because it's one of the projects that was flagged up by Maria earlier is one that has no MDB financing it. So this was purely financed by commercial banks. And perhaps if you can sort of tell us a little bit more as to what is it that made that possible. It's one of the few projects to have come out, and now this is becoming increasingly common.
Thank you, Adil, and also thank you, EBRD, for having me and representing UniCredit, obviously, in the event. So I think what is extremely important is basically, where do you start from? So UniCredit, basically in Serbia, obviously is a part of wider group, UniCredit Group, which has strong track record and a long number of years of expertise when it comes to project financing. Also, local bank early had a vision and interest to participate in renewable energy financing. So we basically started early, and as Miller said, started also when the framework has provided feed-in tariff as a very, so to say, solid and very certain scheme. And this experience really helped for us to start early and recognize all the risks and all the issues that we had to challenge also in the past going forward when it came to more market-oriented approach and more like reliance on the CFD scheme. I would say that you have to build in your own capacities to be able, to get acquainted to the project financing schemes, and then obviously understand how comfortable you are with the legal framework. And here, definitely out of Serbian perspective, I can say that our experience is that we have become comfortable with the legal framework, both valid for investors and financing institutions. Political stability, a regulatory framework which is sound and transparent, but most importantly, stable, I think is one of the key prerequisites for the project financing. And then obviously, as the market is growing and the number of projects are increasing and more in capacity is waiting to be built, liquidity of the market becomes very important. When we started, only few banks were ready to finance projects. They were, I would say, free commercial banks at the very beginning. But then slowly, and we can see really now, which is I think also very important for the investors, number of banks are joining this circle. And I think we can say that there is, I would say, double the size, maybe 6 banks, which are currently ready to finance large-scale renewable energy projects. So I think, obviously, banks are seeing more and more, also following their ESG strategies, opportunity to finance such projects. But what is most important is obviously sound regulatory framework if we speak of CFD scheme or feed-in tariff scheme and stable regulatory framework. As an alternative, obviously, banks are also willing not only to follow the project, which have managed to secure CFD, but also have financial PPAs or, in the future, I guess, corporate PPAs. However, the market situation is such that when we completed construction of first round of renewable energy projects, and it was 2019, since 2023, we only had one project, one sizable project, which has started construction financing and has been connected to grid. And it was based on financial PPA. Why didn't we have more? It's because we were lacking off-take strategies. We didn't have sufficient PPAs offered to the market to be able to construct such projects. We are not only approached by the clients who have managed to secure CFD or PPAs, we have also approached by the clients who have idea to start financing such project on a merchant risk basis or have limited PPA opportunities. And such PPAs are typically on a period of 3.5 years to 5 years basis. And such kind of offtake strategies are possible to be structured, but at the end of the day, in the debt sizing exercise, they're ending up with much higher equity contribution, which is putting burden on the project sponsors. So for that reason, I would say it's not only CFD, that is making projects be impossible. It is a combination of factors. And I sincerely hope that with the liquidity of the markets, we will have more opportunities to see financial PPAs, corporate PPAs as an alternative to the CFD. But till then, it would be extremely important to have also the third round, as we also spoke during the lunch, of the CFD, because also we've seen from the past that we definitely are lacking still alternative offtake strategies.
No, thank you. And indeed, the last point about the third round, this is the big question in Serbia as to what happens next. And actually, maybe it's a neat way to come back, because one of the questions, or one of the things that you highlighted, is the liquidity of the market. Where is this power going? This is something I'm taking away from everything that you have said so far, which is, yes, there is a government commitment to run an auction, to run a CFD, but what does the market tell you in terms of fundamentally, how much power is going into the system? And maybe this is a good way to come back to Montenegro, because Minister Shahmanovic, in terms of overall views on the market, and I'm particularly thinking here about some of the things you said in the previous panel about the interconnector with Italy and the role of Montenegro in terms of its regional integration and the regional role it plays. Perhaps you can say a little bit more about the market overall, how you see the energy market in Montenegro evolving, and what that means, going back to what you said earlier about the quota around 150, 200 plus. What does that mean? But maybe share a bit more about your thoughts on the market development of Montenegro.
You know that we need to diversify our technologies in terms of energy. We need to be happy for the sun, for the rain, for the wind. Energy-wise, every time we see it, we are now much depending on the thermal plant and the hydro plants. So traditionally, we are producing surpluses in Q1 and Q4. In Q2 and Q3, we are importing, but at the end of the year, we are always positive when we have this all the reconciliation in place. So considering the fact that we have 265 sunny days, that we have huge hydro and wind potential, I really think that, and considering our position, geographical position in Europe, I think that Montenegro can really become an energy hub. Energy hub because of all these natural resources, potentials, and also our connection with Italy, and good connection with all neighborhood countries, and with all these incentives that we are providing. As my colleague said, in Serbia, maybe as a big country, they need more time to develop, to test things, and we, as a small system, we can easily adapt to changes and to eventually to modify it while learning by doing. That is something that bigger countries cannot afford themselves. So that's why maybe we are front runners all the time in the integrations. and also some other things. And I think that our economy is also heavily relied on the tourism, which has been shown that it's not a very good thing to do, especially when we have some major events like COVID and energy crisis, and also energy crisis showed us how much we are dependent as a modern society on the energy. And as we had these blackouts last year, these are all the warnings that are telling us that we need to rapidly do something. And these are investments in renewables. This is something that we can afford to ourselves, following, of course, our ecological standards, and considering the fact that we are an ecological state, we need to take care about our nature, of course, but also we need to have balance between nature and economy. And this is myself, I'm coming from the north of Montenegro, and I'm sad to see that all the young people are leaving my hometown and going to Western Europe. So that's why we need to create businesses, and that's why we need to have strong energy system. And regarding the market, we need to feel the pulse. We had this mania now with investments not investments, but the project development in the sector of renewable energy. But now we need to see how it goes, how it will affect our system and our market. So that's why I think that auctions can impose this impulse. And we can see then, I think when we have one good project implemented, others will follow. The thing is that maybe in the past we had a lot of administrative burdens, a lot of unsolved land ownership issues, but we are progressing every day. And I think that the most important is the first project. So the journey of 20,000 steps, 20,000 miles begins with single step. So this is the philosophy that we are following. And I think this will be very much successful, of course, with your support. So as I said, the ball is in your yard. So everything depends on you.
No, indeed, and it's that first step that is the hardest one.
Yes.
I mean, what we have found is, if you can get the first project right, and we certainly learn a lot of lessons along the way, and I can certainly vouch for the fact that there's plenty that we've seen that's gone wrong sometimes. Nothing too bad, but there are certainly things for us to learn along the way. And on the market side, I mean, this is the important point, which is Montenegro is a strategic market. It is connected, and we are seeing a lot of interest, certainly from a number of developers who have looking at this as a market and believing in the idea of this regional hub for energy. Maybe, Maya, I'm going to just come back to you very quickly, because you have brought others onto the table. I mean others as in, we like auctions, but you talked about the corporate PPAs, you've talked about the merchant power plants, which we actually like very much as well. Just maybe to get your insight into the complementarity, to the extent that there is a complementarity between those different models. I mean, how have you found, and I'm thinking specifically here of some of the experience in Serbia, where projects have had parts of their capacity inside CFD schemes and parts outside. I mean, how important have different types of market models been for you in terms of your strategy?
Yes, sure. So going back to Serbia as a successful story. So we were winners on both auctions. On the first one, we won with 300 megawatt wind project, and the second one we were just recently completed with 150 megawatt solar project. So obviously I'm a big fan and believer in the auctions. And you may think now, of course, I'm relaxed because we won. But at first, it's very stressful process until you learn the results the morning when they publish results. So, it is, in fact, very stressful thing. And secondly, we all compete on price. So you have a qualification criteria, and then if you qualify, it's just the price. So what has happened? So you have a benchmark price in Serbia today, which for wind is evolving around 63, 64. And for solar, it's 10 euros less, I would say. So we have the national utility apps, who was basically the offtake. The majority of investors opted to sign the physical offtake with the national utility, with apps. So, and the balancing contract as well, because we are now balancing responsible party. So that actually tells, apps knows they can basically purchase, they did purchase electricity for 53 euros for the next 15 years. That's a benchmark. It's absolutely win-win. So the governments and apps, no, I think it's gonna help them in many ways. First, that energy goes into their 3-year, plan. Secondly, they can actually deal with investors, and they always show up who want a bilateral PPA, for whatever reasons in 2025, 2026. So I believe every government that went through the auctions, it would be easier for them to deal with investors who are seeking something on top, because there is a kind of a platform that is very competitive. The auctions in Serbia were, except for the first solar auctions that were undersubscribed, all the other, were like pure success. So you did actually have, now it's important to design them properly and then have proper quotas so that you allow competition, and it worked well. And going back to your first question about how different market models can complement. So in the auction design in Serbia, cleverly, there was put the minimum capacity with which projects can bid, which was set at 70% of the installed capacity. So yes, I can bid with 100, and I cannot bid with lower than 70%. So what is actually, resulting in is that the big majority, the vast majority of investors actually did with 70%. So they were basically going 30% fully merchant, taking some merchant risk. But with this 70% fully hedged through for the CFD, that's enough basically to have a revenue stream that services the debt. So we are safe, we are bankable, we can build, and then these 30% we can sell on the market, or we can conclude the corporate PPAs. We still have 0 corporate PPAs in Serbia. So we can't really tell that market is like flourishing. I would expect one to be concluded soon. I would like CWP the first one to do that. So I hope we'll surprise you with that. Thanks, Petar.
Good. No. Indeed, I mean, the models that we've seen in Serbia have been interesting.
Well, that's a trader. So we actually speak about real corporates. We speak about big industrial consumers who want to, Where in Serbia, we actually do have the industry that is really hurt by the electricity prices, and they're seeking alternatives. So this is like something that is very, I would say, dynamic now, And for the government, because let's say like roughly 70% of the capacity was subject to the auctions, and another 30% will bid. So the installed capacity for renewables will exceed the capacity that was auctioned, which is again something that goes into the renewable targets and the overall, the green strategy of the country. So and with these competitive prices that we reached, I think this is totally a win-win, I think.
No, indeed. And just picking up on that last point, because it brings back some discussions Milos, you mentioned in the opening about the time it took in Serbia to adopt a res law, and then to actually get to the point about implementation. And one of the reasons for that, one of the things that was happening was a lot of market interest and grid connection. So there was a view about how much capacity is going to come on into the system as we did that. And we saw a queue of 19,000 megawatts. It was growing by day, the number of people who were applying for grid connections. And this is a question that we see policymakers always engaging with, which is, I want to see this capacity come on. I would like to see more renewables, but I want to be able to control it. I want to have some degree of control of how much is coming on, both from a system perspective, to try and have a stable system, and also from a grid connection perspective. So I want to just come back to you, Madam Minister, on this particular point, because I know this is an issue you've been engaging with over the last sort of 7-8 months, and continue to look into it. Perhaps you could share a little bit more about where North Macedonia is on this particular point about grid integration, grid connection, how much of this capacity is going to come on, and how you're managing that.
So we are country with more than 300 sunny days. So first we want to, let's say, put it to zero, the energy import, and then in some short term or even maybe long term, maybe to export also. So what we first decided is that we don't agree with giving land of agricultural land for solar panels. So this was our decision that land category of first, second, and third category won't be able to have solar power plants. Then we are aware of the request, and as I said previously, we have 9.5 gigawatts grid preliminary access. And this is some of them have the grid access for ages, since there was no order. And we are doing this with the new law. It will be, everything should be settled. And we already have 1,000 solar megawatts in the system. Our energy exchange is getting more and more liquid, and we don't have negative prices yet. So nobody tackled this issue. There are a lot of negative prices, and especially from April to October. And since we don't have a single corporate PPA, I know that the companies and the investors have, normally it's a 1-year PPA, so it's only 1 year, and for them it's a risk. So it's a business risk. They can't make their business plan because it's year by year, and with all these negative prices, I understand that for them it's a real challenge. So the CFD, I think, will be a great solution, and also for the investors, where they can plan and they have some security and stability, at least 5. We still didn't agree on the period, but it will be at least minimum 5 years, maybe even 10. It will be much better than the current situation, because 1 year and every day you're looking at the energy exchange. So it's really, I understand from point of investment, it's really a risky one. Regarding the grid, EBRD also finance southeastern part with grid improvement, and we will need more. In June, we will have the first preliminary, let's say, first round of our current status, and we will know how many megawatts we will need more, and then the investment. So we are working parallel on our targets from the just transition, the 1.7, and also on the grid infrastructure, plus the connection. I hope finally we will start with the Albania interconnection, and then there will be the more liquidity. So these are the main things that we are working on it now. And of course, the law for renewable, which will be by June ready.
Yeah, no, thank you. And certainly there's a lot happening, and we do have very clear messages on deadlines as well. So certainly we're working hard on that. I'm just we're coming to the end, or the clock has been reset once, so I'm not quite sure exactly how much time we have, but I think we'll go by what we have. But I just want to kind of turn to you, Mr. Solic, on your experience for, I think no one has seen renewables go from their infancy in a country to what is now viewed as a rapidly maturing market. You describe it as being in sort of stage 2, stage 3, depending on where we define the stages. Maybe just to kind of ask you 2 questions. One, what would be your main message to us as MDBs? What we're trying to do. And two, what would be your main lesson for the policymaker side? So, because I feel that you've seen what's worked, and where perhaps gaps have been, and what we haven't been able to cover, and what we should be looking to cover.
Okay, I'm not so good in conveying the messages, but let me share my thoughts for the policymakers. You mentioned grid in the previous, and you mentioned these long listings, and this is getting serious by introducing bank guarantees as a line which says, okay, those are projects serious, and the people behind that projects are serious. So whatever you can meaningfully adjust to bank guarantees, like to give some certain rights to somebody that to some window of time do something, like I'm really strong supporter of bank guarantees as a concept, because this is something that really force people and investors to be under stress once they give it. We also see that there are also very hazarding people which are taking the risk. Okay, and I also like that. So it's a thing with the higher risk, higher reward. No, this is depending when, like actually the amount is for example, for 60,000 euros for quota for getting the CFD, where I can sign, so no problem. So another message, this morning I started reading the news, and I'm reading an article which start saying with Mr. Trump, beautiful clean coal. And we are bringing back an industry that was abandoned despite the fact that it was the best. And this concerns me, because we are last 15 years trying to one very infant trying to learn how to walk, how to drive a bicycle, with corporate PPAs to drive a car, okay, and fully merchant on the exchange to this is like driving a plane, if we look at the steps that you mentioned. So, and then, then one morning we simply get into the world where we get from the most powerful person in the world saying beautiful clean coal. And this worries me, and I really want to encourage that our governments in the region continue with their policy of promoting renewables. They go hand by hand, both auctions and corporates, because with auctions you certainly will get the lowest possible power price. Because if you ask me if I would like the 15 years contract with government of Serbia, or with strongest balance sheet company in Serbia, I would take always the government. And every investor will do that. Sorry, even if you put Google in the contest, I would say, okay, they are here today, but tomorrow something is changing. There is some new technology, and then they can get busted. But the government is government. People are there. So this is. And the government needs cheap energy. This is so if there is a way to secure a cheaper energy than exactly what we are doing and what we did and what you are promoting with auctions, this is the way.
No, absolutely, and I mean the policy point is really key in terms of a consistent policy message, and this is, I think, something, Minister, you alluded to. About the fact that it's the power that's coming from these renewables, it's there for security as much as it is there for decarbonization. It does provide a secure and affordable source of power. Maybe just the last bit, just to wrap up things. One thing that also deal with, and I want to kind of turn to the commercial bank on this again, which we talked about earlier, and I thought it was worth bringing out, which is about smaller scale projects. Because there is sometimes a view that auctions are not the right instrument when it comes to projects that are relatively small scale. So I'm thinking here about projects that are below 10 megawatts, but not necessarily rooftops where someone is putting a panel on their own home. As a commercial bank, I mean, what's your perspective on that in terms of financing that side? But also in terms of having seen some projects come out of auctions in Serbia that have been within that bracket, and in fact, bid prices that were lower than some of the larger projects. So I wondered if that's something you could share a little bit more about.
Sure. I mean, obviously we've seen on my slide previously that we supported one of the first wind parks that have managed to secure the right for the CFD, Chibuk 2. But at the same time, on the same auction, when the 25 megawatt quota has been allocated, one of the projects that we financed has managed to secure the right for the CFD, and it was a size of 8 megawatt. It's called Novoselo, and it's actually the first project that has been constructed and has managed and has started to receive market premium. I know Miloš will be jealous because he thinks that Pupin was the first. But Novoselo, even though a small one, but was finished first and then started with the trial production first. And this was our, let's say, I would say, first experience out of the CFD scheme. I mean, also speaking about other projects that are coming to us, it is really important, and we see how developers are struggling, because typically domestic developers are coming to you and they are trying to put in place their investment budgets. For some, it's easier because we have a number of investors which are not only constructing and doing project financing, but they are interconnecting their key activities or core activities as a constructor and a provider of EPC service. And then maybe they have more affordable energy, more affordable EPCs and O&M agreements. Of course, this creates certain complexity to do project financing, but then it's not that you cannot do it. If you properly do it and if you properly assess contracting strategies, such projects we can also finance. We did financing on bridge finance basis, basically bridge to PPA. So to say, we financed only construction because investors said, don't push me to conclude PPA now. Don't push me to fix the price now. I want to construct the project, and I think I will have more opportunities to sign PPA. We cannot do it on each project basis, but with the sound investors, with good project share of risk, sometimes we can do it. I also have to repeat that such a financings entail and require larger equity contribution, but still, if the sponsor likes to do project on that basis, obviously we are here to learn and to see how we can do it.
Okay, no, excellent, and it's certainly an important area, one that we want to have a look at.
Can I get a replica? Because
please,
I was mentioned in our parliament, when you're mentioned, you have a right to respond. Yes, I am jealous a little bit, but this project was on distribution and we are on transmission. So it's a different golf game, and Svetlana knows that I want to compete in everything. If we want to, who will get the first by stairs on the first floor, I would run it. So if you wanted to challenge me on that.
Good. I think we're exactly more or less on time. So this would be a good place to stop. Let me just end by saying thank you to all of you for, one, taking the time to share your insights with us. I mean, this is, as I said, we need a village to deliver an auction. This is exactly what that looks like in terms of the policymakers, the developers from with different profiles, the commercial banks, and I'm doubling up, even though I'm not a banker, I'm doubling up as the EBRD Development Bank here. So thank you, and thank you to the audience as well.
Thank you.